Winter blues getting you down? Are you missing the fresh, tasty, nutritionally dense vegetables that you had in the spring and summer from your garden? Get over it. I'm about to show you how you can have carrots in your garden all winter long, even in 2 feet of snow. That's coming up next on The Urban Farmer. Today we're going to be harvesting some winter carrots, and you might ask, where are the carrots? And frankly, I'm not so sure myself, actually. But I know they're here, and I reckon that they're under this bed here. So what we've done is planted these in the late summer. So these carrots were planted the first week of August. And planting them at that time gives me enough time for them to mature before it gets cold, and then we cover them up and then can leave them in the ground all winter. And that's actually the best place for them in some climates. In my climate, I only get, at the coldest times we'll get minus 20 degrees Celsius, but not for very long. So right now we're back up to just a little bit above freezing, but we've had a lot of snow this winter. There's almost 2 feet of snow on the ground, and so I'm gonna have to use my little snow shovel to dig the snow off these tunnels to get in there. So I do want to point out one critical error that I made doing this, and this is something that we should have done, but you know, sometimes shit happens on the farm. These tunnels were not supported by ridge poles, and normally they are. Normally as we go into the winter, we put a rope that ties all of the hoops together, and that creates strength, because what you can see here is that they're actually starting to dip down, and that has caused them to cave in a little bit. In the case of these carrots, it probably won't matter too much because they're in the ground. And what we did in the late fall, in late October, we actually went and cut the greens off these carrots so that they'll be easy to harvest in the winter. Because if you leave the greens on, they will die, rot down, and it'll be hard to see the ground when you're harvesting your carrots. So that's why we've done that. So it's gonna make it easier in this case. So that's pretty much it. I'm gonna put on my head cam and show you guys how this all goes, and we'll check back in at the end. All right, here we go. All right, so we got part of the tunnel off. The reason I went into the middle and did this is because we had to piece together 2 pieces of 25-foot or 30-foot poly tunnels to fit this. And so these are longer beds. They're about 55 feet. So I went in the middle because it was starting to kind of cave in there. So I figured I might as well get the snow off there anyways. And I wasn't exactly sure where in the bed had been harvested before. So it looks like this bed has been mostly cropped out. There's a little bit down on the end there, but this is good stuff. I mean, I'm really happy that we harvested the greens off these carrots now, because it's going to make harvesting them so much easier, because you can see how I can clearly see my rows. And when you watch me harvest, you're going to see why that's important, because you can shank the carrots if you can't see the rows clearly. So this worked out great. So the ground is still soft, even though we've had well below freezing temperatures and tons of snow. The ground's soft, and it's going to be easy to harvest these. So the snow actually helps in this case, because once there's a thick blanket of snow on there, it actually insulates the ground and prevents it from freezing. So that is the key there. So let's get in the dirt and see what we find. All right, that's our haul. I harvested about 10 feet of this bed, and I think I got about 50 to 80 pounds of carrots. It's kind of hard to tell because there's so much dirt on them, so I'll know when I get home, but that would be my guess, but 50 to 80 pounds. They are a larger size carrot, as you can see. They're really good for juicing and cooking. Not as good for, you know, really fancy restaurant dishes where they're using the whole carrot, because generally they want a smaller size carrot then. I probably could have kept these smaller if I would have planted them maybe 1 week later or 1.5 weeks later than I did here. These were planted the first week of August, and they were fully mature by the first or second week of October. So that's kind of how the strategy works, is you want to identify where it really starts to get cold in your climate, at least to the point where things won't grow as much. So for us, by about mid-October, things don't grow very quickly, like they will really slowly. So I'm going to count backwards from my average days to maturity from there, and then that's how I arrive at my planting date. So, you know, 2 months back takes me into August, so that's when, around the time you want to start planting these carrots. So I didn't mention at the beginning, but there's a couple things I want to mention that you need to do this. The first thing you need is some kind of low tunnel. So I use, I call it a poly low tunnel. I talk about it in my book, The Urban Farmer. It's 1/2 inch electrical conduit, 10-foot lengths, bent, and then they're put into the ground. And then I'm using a 6mm greenhouse poly to cover all this up. And then I'm using weights. We have little stone cement pavers that we've got on the ends, as well as little 1-inch spring clamps to clamp the plastic down on certain parts. So those are the main things you need, and then you're just planting carrots into a bed and covering them up before it gets too cold, and then we come back in here and cut the greens off. And so that's it. So I hope that helps, and you can have, if you try this stuff, you can have carrots all winter long. And I'm telling you, these taste better than any time of year because they get sweet in the winter. Perfect for juicing, perfect for making stews. Beautiful stuff. Okay, if you want to see more info like that, please subscribe to this channel, share and like these videos with your friends. Check out my online course, profitableurbanfarming.com, and check out my book at theurbanfarmer.co. All right, thanks for watching.